you get into journalism?
Well, I was at college. I was a political science major and was looking for a job summer before my senior year, and the newspaper had an opening and thought I'd give it a shot, and pretty much fell in love after my first story was printed.
What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, every day is a little different. Mondays, Tuesdays are big deadline days for me, being a weekly paper, which comes out on Thursdays. Now, there's a typical game day. For instance, say we're at a basketball game here today. I get up early in the morning because I don't like starting my day too late. But when I start getting into work, I make sure I know all the background of the teams that I'm covering first. I'll go through. Find out, well, this is the opener of the season, so I'll find out records from last year, who their returning starters are, just so I have an idea of stories I want to write, because a lot of times, things will come up, of course, during the course of the game, but it's always nice to have a plan B going into a game, knowing, maybe a story that you'd like to write, maybe something that you'd like to talk to. So I like to do a lot of prep work before games. Then if I go to a game, generally it's football's at 7, basketball's 7:30. Other sports are maybe 5 or 6. So I live in downtown Chicago, so I'm always in the car for a few hours a day driving to the suburbs. I go to the games, then I'll usually watch the game, interview players. Then I'll go to a coffee shop that's open and bang out a story for deadline.
Where do your story assignments typically come from?
So I would say maybe 25% are assigned, meaning stories that we feel like that we haven't written about a certain team or a school. But because I know my beat so well, I know what I've written about. So I'll most likely come up with most of the stories I did just because I know it better than anybody.
What skills do you think a good journalist should have?
Well, for high school sports, you have to have a lot of patience and ability to deal with people that maybe a lot of times aren't very cooperative. It's not like covering college or professional sports where a lot of times a lot of information is given to you. You have to do a lot of hunting on your own. So being resourceful is certainly a big quality.
Do you have a routine for covering a game?
Routine. I like to get to games early. I don't know if I was always like that, but the last several years I really like just getting settled. So I like to arrive for a football game at least an hour and a half, and I'll go on the sidelines, talk to some coaches, see if there's anything that, before the game, maybe one of their best players is hurt for the game or whatever. Then I'll either sit in the press box or be on the field watching the game. So that's pretty much my routine. Just show up early, get settled.
Which type of story would you say is your favorite to write?
I do like profiling athletes, kind of learning about them, like how they grew up, maybe about their family, friends, like what kind of drives them to be athletes. And I like writing about games. I like going to games. I like meeting people. I like writing stories. I kind of like the people the best.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years, journalistically?
These days, that's a great question, man. Almost the last several years, I really just try and figure out where I'm going to be the next week. I think there's so much changes going on that 10 years may be a little too down the road to think about it. But I think ideally would love to be, maybe a freelance magazine writer, or writing books, or winning the lottery.
What would you write about if you wrote a book?
If I wrote a book, I don't know necessarily if I would write a book what it would be about, but my brother and I tossed around the idea of possibly writing a screenplay for a movie, and it'd be about a professional miniature golfer and kind of his trials and tribulations.